Okay, so I just want to show you one of the ways that I connect stories and anecdotes to writing emails or even just content. The example I'm going to share with you, I posted to Facebook, um, but obviously you can send it as an email, can send it as content. So I kind of do things a bit upside down. So instead of like coming up with an idea or an anecdote as my starting point, I flip it. So the first thing I think is, right, what is it that I want somebody who's going to read this post, what action do I want them to take? That's where I start. Then I think about what is the limiting belief they've got at the moment? What is it that they currently think um, about the thing that I want to share, that I want to change their mind about to get them closer to, um, moving closer to taking this call to action. I also, where possible, try and find some client language or client ideas to weave into it to help make sure that I'm always writing content that's grounded with what my audience is telling me, particularly with this kind of stuff, because obviously the story and the idea is coming from you. You're kind of plucking it out of thin air. So we need to make sure that we're grounding it back to what it is that our clients need to hear from us or our potential clients. Then I sort of link all of this. Then actually what I do, so I'd start here. It's like, right, what do I want them to take? What is it that I'm kind of wanting to talk about? What's the limit, false belief I need to shift? Then I look around and think, right, what's an anecdote that I can share or a story that I've got? So sometimes it just comes to me in the moment. I have a list of things that I've written down, or I might use some of the prompts to help give me some ideas. And then when I've got those pieces down, then this piece, the bits like, okay, so how do I connect the two? So there's not really a science to this. This is a bit of a creative process, but I have found that by going through these steps, it gets my brain thinking in a certain way, and then it kind of does all come together. So I'm going to share an example with you. So the example I want to share to you. So the initial call to action was like, okay, I want to write a post to get people to join the waiting list for my upcoming story selling program. Which at the time of this video is on hold. But anyway, that was my idea on the day. And so the limiting belief or the idea that I know people in my audience have is that writing sales copy that connects with stories is difficult, which is the process I'm sharing with you at the moment. Then I went to, so the client language is, I have the messaging matrix. And so hopefully you've got something similar going on where you can find client language and ideas. And so this is mine here. And so there's lots, I've got loads of stuff, but the one that I decided to use for this was this idea because it's about sales copy. So I went to my messaging matrix. I looked at under sales page, social media copywriting, like what are some of the benefits or pain points that people are struggling with. And so I landed on this because this to me helps me connect that limiting belief that writing sales copy is difficult. So I have put that here. Then the anecdote. So this was the point I got to, and then I was like, right, what's something that I can talk about that it's going to kind of connect some of these ideas together? And the anecdote I came up with, I was looking around my living room and looking at the knitting and was like, yeah, I've been teaching my kids to knit. It's a bit frustrating. There's a process that they follow. I hold their hand for a bit and then they're off. And I was like, okay, that's a good way to connect my process of teaching sales copy and to the anecdote. And so then this, I'll just show you, was just me then brain dumping some ideas. And so this was, I guess, like the very, very rough first draft. And then flesh it out with a framework. So this was my first draft then. It was like, okay, so what you want to do, because it's a story and it's an anecdote, you want to get people's attention with it. Because that's like you're pulling them in the moment. So I just started with I've been teaching my kids how to knit, and for me when I start writing it flows, and I think for most people it does, right? It's just like having the idea in place. And then I wanted to connect this anecdote back to their limiting belief. So their limiting belief is that it's difficult. And so I sort of just fleshed out a bit of my story and then forgotten that the learning curve can be difficult. And so the parallel here, if you look at it, is that I learned how to knit years ago. I thought teaching my kids how to do it would be fairly easy, but I'd forgotten that there's a process that needs to be followed to learn something from scratch. But little by little, we got there. And so when I was writing these, I was like, okay, these are like how I'm teaching them to knit. I want to write these in a way that I can map it on how I teach writing sales copy. So that was in my mind when I did this. So I haven't just plucked this out of thin air. It's like, how do I really ground this in what it is that I want to talk about? And then you connect it back to your offer. So that's what I did here. Writing sales copy follows a similar process. And you can see that these bullets map back onto these. Okay. And then the call to action was, here's what I'm doing. And that's how I pulled it all together. And then there's a link here if you want to see the final post. So this is my first draft. What I generally find is when I'm moving it across to be an email or a piece of social media content, this isn't probably going to be exactly the same because I will edit it a bit as I go. Oops, here it is. But yeah, so I've got a blank template here for you if you want to follow this process for yourself, and see how you go with like writing a story and linking it back to your sales copy.